Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. While growing older is inevitable, many of the troubles we associate with aging, including dementia, disability, and an increased dependence on others, are not. The choices we make now can help us maintain our vitality, a sharp mind, and our independence as we age. For anyone hoping to slow the aging process, as well as anyone who acts as a caregiver, this new book by Dr. Timothy Jennings offers a hopeful, healthy way forward. Dr. Timothy Jennings has been in private practice as a Christian psychiatrist and certified master psychopharmacologist since 1997. He spent more than 2 decades researching the interface between biblical principles and modern brain science, and is a sought-after speaker, lecturer, and the author of The God-Shaped Brain and The God-Shaped Heart. He's in a private practice in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and you can find more at agingbrainbook.com or his ministry website, commonreason.com. Joining us now to continue in our discussion about the aging brain, a regular guest here on the third Thursday of every month at the 11 o'clock hour is our good friend, Dr. Timothy Jennings. Tim, great to see you again, my friend. We've missed you. Our schedules have been kind of crazy, but glad to catch back up and reconnect.
Eric, good to be with you again. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. There's so much going on now with people kind of, it seems that we've gone from the focus on losing weight and weight loss being the big, the Nutrisystems and the Jenny Craigs and all of this, to food's impact on aging. A new twist. Is it a marketing technique? Is it something that's real? And I know that you've done a tremendous amount of work in the area of foods and how they impact the aging brain, faith and how it impacts the brain. And so there's new diets and new things that are out there. You and I have talked about our diet, which is kind of a wild-caught fish and very little GMO and very little white foods. The white group is kind of eliminated from our diet. And, you know, my 93-year-old mother eats that way, and she plays golf. She's going to visit her 95-year-old brother to celebrate his 95th birthday with him, fly halfway across the country, so she's doing great. And you talk in your book about how early onset dementia can, in some cases, be reversed, and even the related to, and I think you told me 3, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and Lewy body dementia cannot be reversed, but others.
No, let's talk. Let me clarify.
Okay.
What the data shows is somebody has mild cognitive changes, so they can tell they're not as sharp, and people can tell, but they're not yet demented. If they do the right lifestyle stuff, they don't progress on to Alzheimer's dementia. Once somebody has dementia, though, that means their brain has already lost billions of neurons, and we don't regenerate all those billions of neurons once they're lost. So the real key in maintaining your faculties is in living a lifestyle that prevents the loss to start with. And that is a lifestyle-related approach to life. And you mentioned something about obesity versus aging. I think that they're definitely related, because obesity accelerates aging and it puts you at a greater risk for an early death, as well as strokes, heart attacks, and dementia. But I think historically obesity focused not so much on its impact on aging, it historically focused on more of a vanity approach, your beauty and your sexual appeal type thing. What's happening with the boomers becoming that older group, people are realizing that we want to maintain our vitality, we want to maintain our abilities, and so it's not so much about the exact weight and our body size. It's really about our health and well-being, and I think that's been the shift.
A lot connected to state of mind, frame of mind. In your practice in psychiatry, you deal with anxiety and depression and personality disorders and things of that nature. Some of those are chemically related conditions where there's an imbalance of some kind. Others are non-pharmacologically related. Do psychiatric or psychological conditions play any part in the dementia continuum?
Yes, they do, because some of the conditions actually are caused or contributed to by the same underlying variables that drive the late onset Alzheimer's. For instance, if you have a history of recurrent major depression, that increases your risk of Alzheimer's dementia, because one of the factors that drives recurrent major depression is inflammation in the body, which causes the insulin resistance in the brain for dementia, synaptic signaling problems in the brain for depression. But the underlying increased inflammatory states and or stress, worry, anxiety, those types of things, they're driving factors that cause physical changes that lead to both of those illnesses. So that can be put you at increased risk. We also know that children who are raised in institutions, orphanages, for instance, or have traumatic childhood experiences, that increases their risk for the same reason. It changes brain development so that their anxiety circuits are more sensitive to being fired. That it's like a hair trigger, and they end up being more anxious and worried and stressed people through life. And over the landscape of their lifetime, they'll have more heart disease, blood pressure problems, as well as higher risk for depression and dementia as they age because of the changes of the stressful childhood.
And we've also discussed before the connection between sleep disorders and lack of sleep, insomnia, and not getting. And one of the things I'm pretty sure that I recall from our conversations was that the concept of 7 or 8 hours of sleep a day does not necessarily have to be a singular block of sleep.
Right. So, in fact, many people have this myth that they think that normal sleep is you go to sleep at a period of time, 10 o'clock at night, and you sleep solidly through for 7 or 8 hours. But no, normal sleep is we sleep in cycles where you go through stage 1, the slow wave sleep, REM, rapid eye movement sleep, and then you wake up and you go back through to REM, wake up. And so people are waking up through the night every 70 to 120 minutes. A little over an hour to 2 hours through the night. That's normal. There'll be a normal wake up. Most of the time, those normal wake ups are just a few seconds. You shift, turn in the bed, you fall back to sleep, and people will have amnesia for that, and they will think that they slept through the night. As we get older, when we wake up naturally, we'll get a bladder call, and we'll go into the bathroom, and then we'll recall the next morning that we had awakened, and we start to think, well, I'm not sleeping good because I'm waking up 2 to 3 times a night to go to the bathroom. You were always waking up 2 to 3 times a night. It's just that before you'd just turn and go back to sleep so quickly you forgot you did. And so you don't need to medicate that. If you're able to get back to sleep fairly quickly, a few minutes, you're good. That's normal sleep still. But so many people will begin worrying. I'm not going to be able to sleep. I'll be waking up through the night. And that worry and anxiety then sets off another problem. And many will then start self-medicating with over-the-counter or prescription sleep medicines. Then many of those medicines can cause memory problems. So just what you're pointing out is people need to know waking up on your own, as long as you're able to get back to sleep, does not need to be medicated.
I just sent you a copy of an article which talks about the new keto. I guess it's not even new, but there's new emphasis on the ketogenic or keto diet, which is a low carb, fat rich diet that reframes the body to be burning fat as a source of energy as opposed to sugar, which sugar has been indicated in almost every study as being bad, 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 bad. But yet,
but it tastes so good, right?
it does taste so good, and so they're coming up with all kinds of new things that they say are all natural, but they talk about the keto diet clears out beta amyloid, which is part of the neurovascular function, sensory and motor functions, as well as circulation, and it says that it has a positive impact on that. Why would that be important?
So let's talk about that. People need to understand a little bit what those things mean and why. When somebody, normal brain, your brain has the ability to make new connections and take back old connections that are not being used. That's how you can forget things, unlearn things. And you know, as a Christian, it's important we unlearn bad habits and that we lose those wired-in drives for unhealthy things. We come to Christ and so forth. And so if you take a new language and you study that new language, your brain will make new pathways and new networks. And the more you practice, the more proficient you'll get. If you stop speaking that language over the course of time, you lose ability as the brain prunes those connections back. So my point is the brain has the ability to knock off dendrites, axons, and even neurons if it doesn't need them. And when a neuron dies, it leaves behind trace chemicals like zinc, iron, copper, which are toxic to the neurons. So the brain has a mechanism to get rid of that. And that mechanism, it releases a protein called amyloid. And amyloid will come in and they'll scavenge up this copper and the zinc and so forth. And then, in order to clear the amyloid out of the brain, there's a little pump that will pump it out of the brain. And that pump there's a key that turns that pump on and off, and that key is insulin. Okay, insulin in your brain directs the removal of the amyloid out of the brain. Okay. Normal stuff. What happens in Alzheimer's dementia is that because of many lifestyle factors, we increase inflammation in our body, we get insulin resistance. And as we get insulin resistance, we can't clear the amyloid out of our brain anymore, and that leads to a buildup that causes other cascades that cause more neuronal death, and that just kind of reinforces the problem, and it drives this factor. So what does the ketogenic diet do, and how does it work? The ketogenic diet used to be called, I think, by some, the Atkins diet, is basically high fat, high protein, low carbs. And when you have a low carb diet, then your blood sugars will fall. Your brain can use two sources of energy: glucose, sugar, or ketones. Okay, protein and carbs can be made into glucose, or made into glucose. Fat is made into ketones. Okay, so when you drop your carbohydrate intake, your body reduces its release of insulin. Insulin tells your body to make fat and store fat. When the insulin levels fall, that signal to make and store fat is removed, and your body begins mobilizing fat as a source of energy, and your liver starts turning the fat into ketones, and your brain starts utilizing ketones. Remember, insulin resistance was driving this problem, and so as we start using ketones and get rid of the carbs, our inflammatory state drives and the insulin resistance is removed, and so the pumps can start removing this amyloid out of the brain again.
Taken on tremendous attention in a lot of circles in tips for preventing Alzheimer's, and as the population ages, as I age, as you age, as we come into a new season. You've given me in the past, and I want to remind people of what dementia is defined as, so that they can begin understanding that it's not just somebody who's scatterbrained,
Right.
or quirky. That there are clinical definitions of what dementia looks like.
So dementia is a syndrome, a functional diagnosis where we've lost function. We've lost memory. So we have memory impairment plus one of 4 domain losses. So memory impairment plus loss of normal executive function. That's the ability to plan, balance your checkbook, follow a recipe, keep your house organized. If you have memory impairment with executive function loss, that's dementia. Memory impairment with aphasia, that's loss of normal language skills. You can't speak normally anymore. That memory loss with Apraxia, that's loss of normal motor skills. You can't button your shirt, tie your shoes. Your motor skills are impaired now. Or agnosia, that's the loss of ability to recognize known objects that you can see, and you have language. If somebody asks you to read, you can read and say chair, but you don't recognize a chair for a chair anymore. Things that you can't appreciate what they are. So if you have memory impairment with one of those or more of those domains that are impaired, that's the syndrome known as dementia. Anything that damages the brain can cause dementia. So Parkinson's disease causes Parkinson's dementia. Vascular disease, little strokes, causes vascular dementia. Alzheimer's disease causes Alzheimer's dementia.
That makes a lot of sense. So when I'm doing something and I have a thought, and I start walking towards what I thought I was supposed to do, and I forget momentarily what was I looking for, what was I doing, and it comes back to me. That's not really a signal of much of anything other than distraction.
Well, it's distraction for sure. That type of a symptom you can see in attention deficit disorder. You can also see in sleep deprivation, classic type of thinking. When somebody hasn't got enough sleep, their mind will wander a little bit. You can see it in the aftermath of a really high fatty sugar dessert. You can do that kind of thing for transiently for an hour or so afterwards. Or intoxication, etc. With dementia, the other thing is it's persistent and it's not changing. So you don't have this symptomology for a few hours and then tomorrow it's all gone and you're back to normal. That's not dementia.
So in kind of combining two of your works, one the God-shaped brain and the other one the aging brain, the faith factor, the belief in a faith system, belief in the Bible, in God's design for man and for mankind, that God did not give us a spirit of fear. There are certain things which we intrinsically know if we've read the Word, that God has designed us a certain way. We do things that are counter to that. Our food system has been polluted. We know that. We're becoming much more aware of that. We're beginning to realize that most of us, if you've obtained, if you lived through the 50s and 60s into the 70s, you're carrying certain toxins and poisons that have been in the food system for a long time. You have some level of toxicity, whether or not it's to impairment or not. Your body has not been able to purge certain things, and we're starting to find that out. Things like in the Roundup case, where people have been exposed to the carcinogens in Roundup, or the asbestos, or the with mesothelioma, the cancers that are derived from that. But in spite of that, we can still live a long and healthy and vibrant life. What part is it? Is there a percentage? Is there a are they indelibly connected? Our lifestyle, our life habits, and our faith, are they all harmoniously linked? Am I better off by having all those components working simultaneously, or can I remove one of them and still be as proficient or as healthy as I could be?
Big four that do work harmoniously together gives you better health and better aging are physical exercise, mental exercise, new learning, healthy nutrition, and healthy stress management, which would be the spirituality piece. But a healthy spirituality actually encompasses all the others, okay? Because under the healthy spirituality or stress management would also come relationship stuff. Healthy relationships, conflictual relationships actually increase your risk of dementia. Healthy spirituality will drive us to take care of the spirit temple, so we'll have better nutrition, we'll exercise more. Many of the things that fall in the other domains are actually under the umbrella of a godly person who is seeking to fulfill their stewardship and governance of the spirit temple and fulfill God's purposes. And so a true healthy spirituality will encompass all of them. No, it's also important, though. People can have a belief in God, and if their belief in God is the wrong God, that can actually be harmful rather than helpful. So the healthiest worldview is the belief in our loving Creator God as the Bible reveals him to be. But the next healthiest worldview would be a godless worldview if it's a loving, compassionate, altruistic worldview of humanism. Worse than that is a believing in a God that is a kind of like the Baal of the Old Testament, a punishing, wrathful God that you have to sacrifice to or else he'll kill you, this type of. It's better to believe in no God than to believe in it, or the God of the Dark Ages that burns people at the stake if you don't believe in him, or has an inquisition. This type of God belief is actually quite harmful to us relationally, but also in our minds and in our bodies because we're living under so much more fear and stress. So healthiest is the truth about God as Jesus revealed him to be, and then all the things that we incorporate into how we live a godly life, that's very healthy for us.
The balance of those four key areas is incredibly important. There are new movements into essential oils. There's new movements into all kinds of dietary supplements. What is your position on these external sources of vitamins outside of our food source, external sources of supplements outside of our food source?
Regarding the food things we ingest rather than things we smell, the data would show that it's always better to get it in a food source. If you're going to get it and can get it in a food sources are simply just healthier and your body does better and you get better outcomes. Some of them are actually harmful if they're not in a food source. Like vitamin E studies show significant benefit and reduction of dementia risk if you're eating sunflower seeds and other sources of vitamin E. But vitamin E supplements have actually shown harm, and because there's 8 different forms of vitamin E called isomers, 8 different forms of it in nature. When you eat it in nature, you get all the 8. But when you get supplements, you're getting just 2 to 4 of the isomers, and it causes an imbalance. And so I'm supportive of getting these things. Some of them it's okay to get in supplements, and it's fine to do, but you still need them. Vitamin B12 for a vegan, for instance, might need to get a supplement. That's important and imperative to get that B12. And there are other supplements that are being marketed that don't have good research behind them. So I recognize there is so much we don't know. Somebody may discover a new plant with a new plant-based herbal supplement that might turn out to be fantastic stuff for our brain and longevity, but I want to see the evidence of that. I want to see some double-blind placebo-controlled trials. I want to see a documentation that it actually works, because there's also a whole bunch of products on the market that make claims without evidence. And so I don't turn around and say, well, they don't work, because I don't have evidence they don't work. I turn around and say to people, I don't know. There's no evidence they work. They're making claims they work. I can think of several branded stuff they market on the TV and radio all the time that have no real evidence associated with them. Not what we call credible evidence. They have the advertising evidence where they have anecdotal reports. People will say, I took it and I felt much better. Yeah, well, if you take a sugar pill and you think it's a pain pill, you will report pain relief because your brain will release endorphins and enkephalins and you get physiologic pain relief and you do feel better, but it's not coming from the substance, it's coming from your belief in the substance. And we know that's very powerful and very real. And so these anecdotal reports aren't really scientific evidence at all.
No, it makes a lot of sense. We're talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, author of The Aging Brain, Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpen Your Mind. He's also the author of The God-Shaped Heart and The God-Shaped Brain. It's kind of a trilogy, and it's really quite extraordinary how God has created us, and it is Dr. Jennings' hope that you will find this healthy aging process as we look at a very large portion of our population who are facing the aging continuum, where I will tell you that 30 years ago it never occurred to me that I'd be sitting here at 67 years old, that somebody would say to me that, are you going to be doing this when you're 70? And we're actually talking about, are we going to stay in this building until I'm 70, which is only less than 2.5 years away. It's not something that's a long-term plan. It's a very short-term decision that it still blows my mind that this is a new reality. for many of us to look at this. I think it's for my mother, and looking at 93, is saying, I just had no idea that I would live this long and this rich and full life. So it is not only is it interesting, fascinating, but it's very applicable to our lives as we look at our aging brains. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about, continue to talk about the ways we can impact our bodies and our minds so that we can prevent dementia, we can sharpen our minds, we can live out this life of dignity and be of service to the Lord all the days of our life and find rich meaning in that service. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, as we do on the third Thursday of the month at 11 o'clock a.m. Central Time. We're talking about The Aging Brain, his book talking about proven steps to prevent dementia and sharpen your mind. Tim, welcome back to the program.
I'm glad to be here, Eric.
Supplements, we were talking about supplements, vitamins and supplements, and one of the cautionary words that we were speaking about off air is that some of these supplements are great, beneficial if they have the studies behind them. If you can get them from a natural source, they're fine, but there's others that may work in conflict with or exacerbate a medical condition that you have. Some in the area of this nitric oxide, superoxygenators that wind up being stimulated if you have a heart condition or you're being treated for a heart condition, that there's things that you should certainly talk with your doctor about. Sound medical advice. I just had my forced annual Medicare. I finally figured it out. I put it off until July this year, so that means I don't have to do it till July next year. If I put it off for 6 months till December, right, then the following year I can actually skip a year. Right. By the way I'm doing it, because I take no medical conditions at all, nothing whatsoever. I take 500 milligrams of niacin in the morning and 500 at night, and I take a fish oil supplement, even though I get a lot of natural fish oils, and I still have a doctor that believes in aspirin, baby aspirin, every other day, and that's my total regimen of things that I take. So I'm not much of a candidate. I'm not a very good prospect for money making for him in the system. And again, this year he asked me the same thing. You know, I'm going to give you 3 objects I want you to remember, and in 10 minutes in the conversation, I'm going to ask you for the objects again. And he did the exact same thing he did last year. And it was pen, pad, and chair. And I said, I thought you were going to change. You told me you were going to change the 3 words. He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, for the last 4 years, you've been using pen, pad, and chair, and you're using it again. And he said, you actually remember the very first? I said, yeah, I remember the first time. And I told you last year. Again, you got to change your words, man. People are going to walk in here. You could have said to me when I walked in the door, what are the 3 words? I would have told you pen, pad, and chair, and I would have gotten it right. So, you know, that kind of began the base.
Correct, because that now is a test of your long-term memory. That's not a test of your immediate memory. So even you go in there and you remember those from 4 years ago, that is not a test of whether you're having short-term memory problems anymore. He has to give you something you don't know for you to test your new learning and memory.
Right. So in that paradigm, as we look at long-term memory and we look at short-term memory, and this is a question that I wanted to ask you. I don't know what work you've done in dream, or what they make you do in medical school when it comes to, especially in psychiatry, in the realm of dreams. But what are your thoughts about the dream state and what's revealed to us in dreams? Do you find that to be, we see biblically, it's a place in where God has imparted. We also see that it can be impacted by natural stimuli, like what I ate, or my last impression, what I just watched or read. But then there are dreams you have of, recently I've had dreams of people from 40 years ago that have started appearing in my dreams.
So let's just give the nod to the reality that God can communicate people through dreams. We've seen that in Scripture, but the vast majority of our dreams are not divine revelations.
Correct.
Okay, so we don't assume when you have a dream it's a divine revelation. There has to be some extraordinary reason to go down that trail.
Yes.
So we're going to just set divine revelation to the side, and we're not talking about that anymore.
Right.
Okay. When it comes to normal dreams, the way people should conceptualize those is this way. You ever played the game Pictionary?
Sure.
And in Pictionary, you have a word, and you need to get the people to say that word by drawing images. You can't use text. You can't write. When you dream in images. You don't dream in texts. And so what happens is when you're dreaming, your brain will draw from the database of your memories images to connote concepts, ideas, or themes. And typically it's the concepts, ideas, or themes that are most emotional for you, what you're struggling with at that time. Rarely does your dream represent what it appears to represent. So if you had a card in Pictionary that said tranquility, that's the word, and you've got to get people to say tranquility, what do you draw? Maybe a pond, something like that, a stream, okay? But as you draw that, and I have people say beach and sunshine or whatever, but all those things, beach, sunshine, water, none of that is about beach, sunshine, and water. It's about a tranquil state, okay? And so that's how it works in dreams. Most of the time, it's not about the people you see in the dreams. You have to thematically look at it. Okay, what was the theme of the dream? And then look in your life. Is there something I'm struggling with? Classic ones where people are drowning in a dream. Do you feel like you're overwhelmed with something? Do you feel like that you're trapped by some circumstance or some situation or some relationship, etc.? And then that's really what the dream is representing.
You know, it's really interesting. I'm kind of thinking as you and I have spoken about. Sometimes we use these as when I talk with Dr. Mark Baker, who is the Levy Counseling Centers in California. He and I talk about our own stuff. We have our own counseling session where we both exchange ideas about our own experiences. I do this with you as well because we can relate to. I can best articulate what if it's going through this 67-year-old mind. Is it going through other 67-year-old minds? Do they also have the same kind of questions? And dreaming is something that I don't remember long ago being much of a dreamer. Or having recollection of dreams or recollection of even dreaming. If somebody would have asked me, I would have said, no, I don't really dream. Well, we know everybody dreams. We just don't have cognitive recollection. But lately, people have been appearing from the past, and so I've had to ask myself, do I need to reconcile? Do I have unreconciled personal relationships, and looking to see whether there's connections and if anything resonates. And in most cases, it has not really resonated.
What might it be? Well, this normal stage of life at 67, this is we have different stages of life that we go through. And this is gerontivity. This is where a person normally begins reflecting on their life to see if their life has had meaning and purpose, and if they've achieved what they've wanted to achieve, and that they have a sense of satisfaction with the journey of life that they've taken. Your dreams reflecting on people from the past would be perhaps a reflection of your normal life reflections of where you are in life, and if you have, basically, well done, thou good and faithful servant
Right.
type of reflection.
It's interesting because there are dreams which are pre-believer, and there are dreams which are post-believer, and they are different. They are different from a perspective. I'm in a different position in the dream than I am after I came to the Lord, and let's call it a midpoint. I was 44. So let's say that was the mid stage of life. If Moses lived to be 120, let's say 60 is the beginning of middle age. But I came to faith at 44, so I have a very distinct corporate, pre-believing, and existing life, and I have a very clear delineation between the post-believer life, and I can see a very clear line into who that person was. And some of the journeys are to that person who I used to be, kind of as that little bit of reflection that Paul had where he says that, not that I've accomplished all this, but this I do, forgetting what's behind, I press on to the prize that waits for me in Messiah.
That's right.
So there's little snippets of what life used to be like before the Lord, with encounters with people that were not some positive, some negative, some just there. But there's always much more depth and meaning to the after the Lord memories, which is the new creation. So how does the mind, in this concept of becoming a new creation, and interestingly, never thought before about the psychiatric aspects of the fact that once I was this person, now I am, behold, I've made all things new. I'm a new creation. The old is gone, the new has come.
We should talk philosophically about what that means, because I think people get misunderstanding. Does that mean that you have a different birth mother? You grew up in a different school, a different community? I'm a new person. Does that actually mean that I have a different genetic makeup, that different memories? No, it means I have a different character. I have a different set of motives. I'm no longer driven by fear and selfishness and survival of the fittest and putting me first. I'm driven by principles of godliness, love for others, and honesty and integrity. That I have, really, it's all about character. And I think some people have guilt and shame over some of the way they lived their life prior to their true conversion, even if they were raised as, religious in church. There's many people in church and haven't been reborn yet. Okay, but once they've given their heart to the Lord, many people look back and they have a fantasy about and a dream, a wish that they could erase from history that prior time of their life, and so they latch on to words like the old is gone, the new has come, as if that wasn't me, that was some other person. No, that was the pre-reborn, healed, renewed you, but it was still you. But that was you in your sin-sick state, and this is you in your reborn, Christ-indwelt state. It's a big difference. So we don't erase the history, I don't think. We look back on it and say, praise God that you've delivered me. What a man of sin that I was, and so forth.
If I came to you and did not frame it in the form of a born-again encounter with Jesus, and I think I'm somebody who's brand new, might that give you a little pause as a psychiatrist to think that maybe I'm having some kind of personality disorder?
No, not really, not at all. See, I don't get caught up in semantics. I don't care what people call stuff. What's the old saying? A rose by any other name is just as sweet.
Right.
So conversion by any other name, it's really about the quality of the rebirth of the heart, and that's only achieved through the working of the Holy Spirit and the accomplishments of Christ. Paul says, in Romans 2:12, that those who have not heard the law, but do by nature the things contained in the law unto themselves, showing that the law has been written upon their heart. Well, that law writing upon the heart is the new covenant. That's the rebirth experience. But they haven't even heard about it yet. How can that happen? Because Romans 1:20, God's divine nature is seen in what he has made, so that men are without excuse. The point being is, God is working to bring all people to a renewed experience with him, and those whose hearts are sensitive to the workings of the Spirit uses whatever light is available to them to lead them, and if they're sensitive, they follow the truth where the truth leads, as they're able to assimilate it.
And that makes perfect sense. As believers, we embrace something that is unseen. If we take a look at the natural imagination, natural creative brain, from a faith perspective, we're believing in the unseen, but we see evidence of the unseen. What faith is that evidence of.
How many radio waves have you seen?
Agreed. How do I see love? How do I?
This is the point. There's lots
Right.
of stuff we believe in that are unseen, but we see the evidence of it. And so I don't find this idea of faith being believing in something without evidence. Not at all. There's evidence that radio waves exist, but I've never seen one.
Right.
Okay? There's evidence that God exists, but I haven't yet physically seen him with my visual eyes. I've seen him in his works and in his action. I've seen him in my own heart and what he's done in the transformation. But I haven't seen him with my retinas.
Well, I completely agree with you. Advice for people who have relationships with individuals that they are observing things that give them concern. How do we broach the subject? How do we introduce into the narrative the idea that there is something different?
Something in their life that is that they would be benefited by, or something in their life they're currently doing that is harmful that they might want to change. Is that what you're
Yes,
talking
yeah. You've noticed a change in somebody, and you are aware that they're not aware of it.
First, my recommendation constantly, the first introduction has to be some communication of love for them. I love you. You're important to me. I care about you. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be happy. I want you to have the vibrant, full joy of life that God designed. And that concern, that love, that they know you really care about them. And you might have to sit next to them for a while and watch them grieve, perhaps, or go through a hard time, or just help them with a physical condition for a period of time before you can get to the real deal. But the point is, you demonstrate that you care about them, the person, and then you step up next and say, hey, I notice you've been struggling, and I care about you, and I'd love to talk to you about some things that might really help you have less struggles and have a happier, healthier life. Would you like to talk about that? And when they know you care, they may not agree, but they might disagree with you, they might reject what you say, but if they know you're coming from a place of concern for them, not a place of condemnation of them, they're generally at least willing to hear and even be appreciative of your concern, even if they don't follow through with your recommendations.
You know, I find this to be the case in people with aging parents, or an aging parent, surviving parent, who's now struggling with day-to-day functions or day-to-day tasks or various things, and they make a very big point of emphasizing their independence, and they don't want, I've got a friend who's got an 83-year-old mother that she lives by herself. She has a visiting angel come twice a week. He wants the visiting angel to come 3 times a week, and she says, no, I don't want that. I want to be left alone. I don't want this person. I don't want the company. And he's concerned that that extra day is going to be very beneficial to be able to keep her under a little bit closer observation, because he's noticing her slipping in other areas, and this will give him an extra set of eyes.
So now you bring in another variable, and that other variable is the assessment of the other person's capacity to appreciate, understand, and assimilate. And so there's a concern, is it just physical decline in this person, or is this person also really not capable of fully appreciating the need anymore and or fully remembering the conversation anymore? And in those particular cases, you still want to show love, but you actually don't defer to the person who is mentally compromised in their decision-making. You don't defer to their decision-making anymore. You go ahead and do what's best for them, explaining in the most loving, gentle way, but you still bring in the extra person. A lot of times I've seen people who may be cognitively intact, 83 years of age, cognitively intact, needing the physical help, and they resist it because of fear. Typically, the fear is, if I get more help, it's the next step to the nursing home. So their fear of losing the autonomy, fear of making themselves look weaker and so they're trying to posture themselves as being able to do more than they really can, or fear of financial loss. Who's going to pay for this? And even if it's Medicare paid for, they don't have to pay anything. Many of the people that I've dealt with over 80 don't get that, and they still feel like it's coming out of their pocket, and they don't want to spend the money because they want to be financially secure.
The alarming, and maybe it's not statistically an increase, maybe it's just a statistical awareness of the increase in suicide rates at younger ages.
No, suicide has increased steadily over the last 10 years.
It has increased.
It has increased steadily over the last 10 years.
Okay. What do you see this as more, from a spiritual perspective, I see this as more of the enemy at work in the doors that we've opened societally, and especially in North America, culturally, into allowing the counterfeit in to almost every facet of our life.
Suicide is almost always related to some type of mental health problem. Almost always. It's typically a symptom of a mental health problem, and it can come from depression and bipolar, or it can come from situations like a boyfriend-girlfriend breaking up. We call that an adjustment disorder, marriage falling apart, but a situational stressor that's overwhelming. But what are the factors that mitigate against a suicide? It's a person who feels very connected, very loved in the face of a trial or tribulation, and they still have hope of some escape from their pain. Almost all suicide is a person who is in some type of pain, emotional pain, financial pain, physical pain, and the pain has persisted, or their perception is such that they lose hope that it's going to ever go away, and suicide becomes their escape from their pain. And so to the degree that people are connected with others that can give them hope of way out of their circumstance, then generally most people don't actually want to die. They want the pain or the problem to go away. And so those are types of approaches that we can take. And if you think, now, why is it going up? Because in our society currently is going down a trail of ever-increasing fear, ever-increasing problems that are existential in nature: global warming, food famine shortages, food poisoning, problems that are beyond any person's to cope. Families are fragmenting, and the common message in our politically correct society today: there is no God, you're on your own. And so there's a certain sense of nihilism, I think, that is taking root as well in people's hearts. It's all meaningless. It's like Ecclesiastes: vanity, vanity, vanity. Nothing matters anyway. And I think there's a certain aspect of that where historically in our country, it was God, family, country. There were three things that we were tied to as people. We have a God, we have a family, and we have a country we're proud of. And so we had three things that were bigger than us that gave us something that we could hold on to as an anchor that could get us through tough times. But now there's no God, and the families are broken, and our country is an abuser of minorities and other groups, and we just can't trust our country anymore. And so people are feeling more isolated and alone. And then social media has come along. And social media has actually broken down relationships where people spend time online making artificial connections, but they're not actually meeting real people and connecting in the real world anymore.
So that's the loneliness, they're connected but they're disconnected.
The root is the lack of real, genuine love being experienced in the life.
And so, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but this is going to be an important topic for us to continue to talk about as to what we can do and what we should be doing, and some things, warning signs that maybe we can be looking for and become more attentive and get out of our own worlds and out of our own sphere and start plugging into another sphere.
And there's a blog on my website on the suicide risk assessment and prevention that people can go to and just type in suicide and they can find that.
Okay, great. We've been talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, author of The Aging Brain, Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpen Your Mind, as well as The God-Shaped Heart and The God-Shaped Brain. You can find more at agingbrain.com or his ministry website, comeandreason.com. Tim Jennings, it is always a pleasure to be with you, my friend. We always run out of time. Always think of more to talk about. Look forward to seeing you. It won't be until, I'll see you next month, but I won't see you. You'll be in Canada in November, but I will see you in October, and I look forward to it. God bless you, my friend, and thank you.
Take care, Eric. Bye-bye.
Bye. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.